Hi, everybody. My name is Charlie Cole. I am the CEO of FTD as of March 23rd. And for those of you that have been living under a rock, a lot's happened since March 23rd. And I thought that made the topic of this conversation that much more relevant, which is, what does crisis leadership really mean, right? And how did we as a team kind of rally around that over the course of really these last, hasn't even been, 4 months? And so I thought I'd just start by setting the stage. And I alluded to the fact that I did start on the 23rd. To put that in perspective, the FTD offices are in two areas in the Chicagoland area. So we have an office in downtown Chicago. We have an office in Downers Grove, Illinois, which is give or take 20 miles as the crow flies from our office downtown. On Saturday, March 21st, J.B. Pritzker issued the stay-at-home order for the state of Illinois. So when I started on March 23rd, to put this in true perspective, our company's 110 years old. And in the 110-year history of FTD, we had never been completely virtual. And so it was just this amazing moment where I feel like the idiom, "you can't make this stuff up," tends to be completely overused. I couldn't have made this stuff up. And there was this moment about the week before I started, when I was walking the park by my house with my wife, that I let like this moment of doubt creep in. And I looked up at the sky and just yelled the F word. And my wife said, "What is wrong with you?" And I basically said, "What have I gotten myself into?" And I think we can all agree that's not the right mindset to go into it. But I think it was a little inevitable. And we all kind of felt that at some point in time during this crisis. Just to make matters worse, back when the world was normal, if you will, the business was missing forecasts. And so the two biggest times in our industry are Valentine's Day and Mother's Day, which is foreshadowing, by the way. We had missed our Valentine's Day forecast by about 30%. So things weren't looking great before COVID-19. And during my first 3 weeks on the job, our website had 2 fatal crashes, meaning that if you went to www.ftd.com, it would say, "Sorry, there's no website here." To put that in perspective, I've been in digital and e-commerce since I was 21. So I'm 38 now, so call it 17 years, give or take. I've had 2 fatal crashes of websites in my whole career. At FTD, I had 2 fatal crashes in my first 3 weeks. So that kind of sets the stage for you. And it basically caused us as a leadership team to implement a 3-step process. For the first 3 weeks, we were to save as much cash as possible. Basically stop all top funnel marketing, all contractors, all unnecessary hires, all long-term projects. They all stopped. And that was for an obvious reason, which was to save cash. But maybe the less obvious reason is we had no idea what was really going to happen, right? We didn't know whether the shelter in place would mean that all of our florists around the United States were going to literally be closed and not allowed in. And so a little context here, FTD's supply chain is made up by 2 core groups: a group of local florists around the United States and dropship partners in Colombia, Ecuador, and around the United States. We didn't know what was going to happen to any of them, right? Were they going to be open? Were they going to be open but closed to the public and only allowed to fulfill orders? Were they going to be straight closed and we were going to have florists literally trying to fulfill orders from their homes? It was this entire area of uncertainty, which is why let's use these 3 weeks in the most responsible fiscal way possible, but also to buy ourselves time. And I think that is an admission of it's okay to not really know what's going on sometimes. And to pretend and to speak from this point of gravitas on my first day to be like, business as usual, we're sure things will be fine, would have been both arrogant and stupid. But there was a point in time where we had to be, okay, look, our biggest 2 weeks of the year is Mother's Day. And Mother's Day landed on May 10th this year, so about 6 weeks after I started. After those 3 weeks of buying ourselves time, we as a leadership team, we're going to say, look, we're going to make our forecast. We're going to deliver the numbers we said we would. And yes, we know that we missed forecasts on Valentine's Day, but you know what? That was then, this is now. We're going to do every single thing in our power to make these numbers. And if we're going to leave it all in the field, as they say, and then we'll figure it out, right? So beyond that, we'll understand and fix the systemic changes. But think about that last box. What we actually said to the organization is, over the next 7 weeks, don't think beyond Mother's Day. It's almost anathema to what we've all read and taught in like these visionary blogs where you have to have a 1-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan. We more or less forbid the entire organization to thinking beyond 35 days, or excuse me, like 35 work days, that is. And so I think it's really important that the first step for us in crisis management, if you will, was to limit the scope. Let's not worry farther ahead than we have to. And I think that, again, is contrarian to a lot of what you may have read about this concept of always need to be one step ahead. This wasn't a situation that it was plausible to be one step ahead. And so when we looked at the business, particularly that 4-week period, we asked ourselves, what are all the business buckets we could possibly touch? And we threw out these concepts of technology, marketing, merchandising, and you can see them all on your slides. And the reality is, there are certain things that you can materially affect in 6 weeks. There are certain things you materially can't affect in 6 weeks. So we weren't going to be able to rebrand the entire company. We weren't going to be able to re-platform the entire website. But we were going to do certain things that were directly connected to delivering that goal of making Mother's Day forecasts. But I think it's as important to admit what you can't change versus what you can. Because this is, again, an area where we let projects get away from us and the date gets pushed at, and people love to put, axiomatic things like scope creep out there and all these kind of areas that it's so normal for deadlines to be missed because it's just part of project management. We didn't have that option, right? We didn't really have till Mother's Day because the Mother's Day peak starts 2 weeks ahead. So we really only had April 27th. We had more or less a month to materially change our organization to make up a 30% gap, which is what we saw on Valentine's Day. And so we picked these 11 buckets to really focus. Within technology, within marketing, within merchandising, sourcing. That's a weird one, right? Well, go back to this concept of uncertainty. We needed to have access to flowers as many places as possible because we didn't know if one was going to close. What if there's an outbreak? What if Colombia shuts down their air freight? That was on the table, by the way. So we had to have the most diverse sourcing mix possible just for the form of hedging. Customer service, my single favorite story, maybe in my entire business career. FTD has a fairly hybrid approach as it pertains to customer service. We have an in-source team based in Downers Grove. Of course, now at this point, they were all virtual. And then we have an external partner that allows us to have offshore, pretty normal for large organizations. Our offshore happened to be in Philippines. In the Philippines, everything was going fine until the city that our customer service center was based was fully locked down. Nobody in or out. So now we're trying to figure out, okay, where can we spin up an English-speaking offshore group specifically for our peak? And our partner threw out Jamaica. Great. Jamaica had really low COVID numbers. Everything was fine until it wasn't. COVID numbers started to creep up, and now Jamaica's out. Now we're scrambling to Egypt. Remember that thing about accepting what you can and can't do? This became our reality. We were doing our best. We were one step ahead. We were hedging. We had an offshore partner. We were ready to have seasonal help. But oh yeah, if we were to do this entire United States, how do you drug test a seasonal employee in a world where no one's going into an office? These were all things we had to plan for just in the concept of customer service. So as important as hitting the plan is on the front end, on the revenue side, we have to be able to service all those orders to the best of our ability. Logistics, kind of part and parcel to this idea of sourcing. We have to be able to ship orders from as many places as possible. We spun up a direct shipment from Colombia for the first time in FTD's history. Why? Because we had to. We didn't know what the strain on UPS was going to be over the course of this time. And it was just these kind of areas where, yeah, we're chasing our tail the whole time, but you're just doing your best based on the hand you were dealt. CRM and retention. Oh my gosh, has a customer file ever been more meaningful than during COVID-19? You can talk to folks and you have a means to talk to them. In a lot of ways, they're the most captive audience you've ever had. And so that was an area we knew we had to focus on. Data and analytics, not in the sense of where I think most people think of data analytics. Most people think of data analytics as the ability to predict the future. In this case, it was ability to react in real time, right? Because the mindset of the American consumer, and even in the states and in the municipalities, the mindset was entirely different. It was changing in real time. What does shelter in place mean? Is it safe to send flowers? Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna be able to go home for Mother's Day. What are all these little shifts in mindset that we have to monitor on an hour by hour, minute and minute basis to change our email flow, to change our sourcing mix, to change our marketing mix? This was not about predicting the future. This was about chasing the past. And I think it's important to remember that delineation because it's really easy to get self-righteous about it. It wasn't a moment for self-righteousness. It was a moment of reacting in real time. Pricing and promotion. Classic supply and demand problem where there was lots of flowers. There was lots of people wanting to buy flowers, but shipping became so much more difficult. Where you had an industry where you were used to having folks being able to ship flowers this far apart in a flower shop. Now they had to be this far apart in a flower shop. And I think that made real opportunity for us to make sure we were selling flowers we knew we could fulfill. And we had to be cognizant of the labor more so than the supply. So we had to pull back promotions to maximize our revenue as much as possible. I mentioned the farming partnerships. And finally, how do we support our florists? Our florists are small businesses. They were the ones that were actually sheltered in place. To put it in very blunt terms, hell of a lot easier for us to become virtual than it is for them. We count on them to fulfill our orders. So we put something in place specifically in April where we basically said, look, we're going to credit $1.5 million back to our florists. By the way, not the easiest conversation for a CEO in his second week to have with his investors. Hey guys, I know you just hired me to turn this business around. I'm going to give away $1.5 million. But it's one of those moments that we as a team immediately knew we were in the foxhole with the right investors because it wasn't even a second thought. We knew we had to do something to support our florists or else we didn't have a business. And I think that was an important conversation. So what were those were kind of the broad stroke action takes. I kind of distilled in this slide, to me, where the four biggest things happened. We rapidly onboarded people. We onboarded a CTO. Remember the website going down twice in 3 weeks? I needed someone that could really help me, and we brought on Matt. Our CMO, how are we going to market these folks? How do we make sure our email is going to hit spam traps? Taryn. Our creative direction, Annalise, how do we make sure our flowers look beautiful? Patty, our COO, all those florist relationships, all those sourcing relationships. We brought people on very, very quickly, and they were all onboarded by just after Mother's Day. Agency changes. We looked at the agency on day one and said, what does the contract look like for the last 7 years versus what do we need moving forward? And we shifted agencies. In my first 8 days, we were onboarding a new paid search agency and a new paid social agency to hit our goals. You had to move that quick. Data. Now, I want to be very careful with the word data here because I feel like people tend to get caught up in the concept of data versus analytics. The most important thing to me here was accessibility to data. How does our organization continue to react in real time? That doesn't mean that they're writing equations in Python and R. They're no data science. It's really just like, I need to know what's going on in real time. I need to be able to pull my own data. So creating dashboards, making our order management system have real-time access to data so it can shift on the fly. Remember, the ground's moving beneath your feet, right? The situation's changing in real time. Analytics are really for when you have a chance to sit down and try to figure stuff out. None of us had time to figure stuff out during the situation. And so it was really more about accessibility and democratization than it was hardcore data science, which I think is the popular thing to point to. And then the front end changes, I'm going to show you a couple that seem so simple and stupid, but what happened in 4 weeks? We launched Apple Pay. We launched Google Pay. We launched Afterpay, which I think will tell you, one thing about FTD. We have a long way to go as it pertains to front-end optimization and kind of modernizing the digital wallet, but we had to pick our battles on what we could accomplish in that 4 to 6 week period. And I'll show you a couple homepages here, kind of a before and after, if you will. This is the old simplified homepage. This is just a basic homepage we use. And I want to call your attention to the bottom black box, okay? The bottom black box has 4 things in here. It has zip code, it has date, it has location type, and it has occasion. A lot of reasons went into that, but remember, we're trying to hit a forecast. What is conversion rate optimization 101? Simple, stupid, get out of people's way. So what did we do? We made the call to action at the top smaller. That brought it up above the fold, did particularly well in mobile, I might add. And we asked for 2 things, delivery zip code and delivered date. So I'm going to pop back to the first slide. We were asking for 4 things. We were using the word gift a lot. View giftability, check giftability, etc. Back on slide 8, we say, get started. What's your zip code? What's your delivery date? And shop everything. We found that this drove a ton of people into the funnel. We saw about a 30% uptick for people on the homepage getting to step 2. It's a nice learning of getting back to basics Because in our world, if we know your zip code, I know where we can ship from, I know our florist capacity, I know what flowers are available, and I also know what does delivery in that area look like? Because in this world of COVID-19 affecting UPS, FedEx, USPS, we knew where places were coming in later. And maybe we would limit our capacity more based on date and zip, but I had to have both. I didn't really need to know if it was for Mother's Day. It'd be a nice to have. It could improve my personalization from a flowers perspective, but it wasn't a need. So in a crisis management situation, what mattered the most to us was having a read on capacity, because that was our only limiting factor. And again, capacity was limited predominantly by labor and our freight options. So what happened? In April, remember, save money, don't spend money, save money. We exceeded our revenue forecast by 1% and our EBITDA forecast by 137%. So we kind of learned right away that our top funnel marketing wasn't really performing, right? We could cut it off the top and things didn't really get any worse. And that was a huge, huge win. And that EBITDA includes the 1.6 million we gave back to our florists in the form of COVID relief. And then May, I think I can say without exaggeration, it was the best month in the history of FTD. We were benefactors, I will say, of some tailwinds. We've heard from our partners at Google, there was around 15% more interest in the category, which I think logically probably makes a lot of sense to you, in the sense that more people resulted to flower delivery because we just couldn't be there in person. And it was a great way to kind of say, I love you to mom. And it was driven by these kind of focuses on profit and optimizing towards higher ASPs, conversion rate, getting people in the funnel. Now, what? So what do we do now? And I think it's important to say at this point, it wasn't all, if you pardon the flower pun, sunshine and roses through Mother's Day. It also laid our biggest flaws to bear. All of these capacity constraints, all of these labor shortages, UPS being overwhelmed, it led to something really simple from our point of view and something that I love to remind our company of. It meant we disappointed some moms, and that sucks. Right. And so we took our failures as serious as our successes. And we actually saw that our return rates and refund rates were up a little bit year over year. Some of them we can control, some of them we couldn't, but I promise you, we're obsessing over it. And I think that's something that's really important when you come out of COVID-19. I think you'll find that all of these strains and these peaks and valleys and these increase in demands and these shortages of inventories, it can teach you a lot about your business. And you just have to make sure to not just conflate natural tailwinds or headwinds from the epidemic to problems that already existed. And in our case, I think we did have a customer service problem and a customer experience problem, and now we're getting on fixing it. But more importantly, I get really excited about the clean slate opportunity to design our work culture. I worry that people will miss this opportunity. There has probably never been a moment in history where every company on the face of this earth has a chance to basically go to their board and ask for a clean slate. I want to work from home 4 days a week. I want to be able to hire people remotely. I want to have a more flexible hours. There's not a board on earth that's not going to listen to you. I'm not going to say they're all going to say yes, but use the opportunity to drive your work culture. It doesn't matter if you're entry level or at the C-suite. You're probably having an employment survey in your company today. Take it seriously. It's the first time in my lifetime I can never remember this opportunity. Accountability goes up even higher. Right? Let's take those things like the customer service complaints really seriously, align incentives around it. And more important, the thing that excites me the most, we did great over Mother's Day. And now we have sort of the morale, the team to really kind of go after the industry in a way that I think we can make a meaningful mark. So in summary, all of these things required a clear line of communication to the organization. Don't think past 7 weeks. We're going to make forecasts. We're going to save money for the 3 weeks. This came as just an open and transparent conversation of the reality of our situation. You cannot underestimate how important that clarity is. And then finally, in a crisis, don't worry about all the business books and crap you learned in college because it's impossible to plan for this. Embrace reacting. Embrace kind of playing one step behind. Understand your limitations. React the best you can. And then in real time, but also post-mortem, post the holiday, learn from it. I guarantee you're going to have some huge successes and you're going to have some huge failures, but it's important to understand your limitations. And so for me, it's a situation that I don't think I could have ever made up. I think it's a situation that I learned a ton from, and I can say honestly, I think the FTD team while completely cognizant and mourning the overall loss of life and kind of tragedy that's happened in America because of COVID-19, I think we're going to come out stronger from it. Thanks so much.